From Matthew chapter 20 come these verses. It's a parable, a story that Jesus offered to describe the kingdom of heaven. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When the evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those who had been hired at 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they'd receive more. But each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. So ends the reading of God's holy word. Let us pray. Source of love and life, we draw near to these words, to these ancient texts from the Gospel according to Matthew. And even over the centuries, the millennia, they have not lost their punch and their challenge, oh God. They seem to fly in the face of so much that we assume to be right and fair. Help us, if we do not understand them, to at least embrace them with an open spirit, trusting that in some way you will bless us through them. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. Very early on in life, we learn what's fair and what's not. Kids know. Kids come in all sizes and shapes and colors and creeds and stripes and types. But if there's one offense that no kid will permit, particularly in the school lunch line, it's budging. And it's funny, it doesn't seem to matter what's for lunch. It could even be creamed codfish. Maybe nobody wants it, but there's still a fierce sense of justice about waiting your turn. And it's not just kids. Grown adults, waiting with their children in a line to see Santa Claus on a Saturday afternoon at the mall, can be just as fierce in their sense of justice. Go to the back of the line. We all can. There's almost an organic sense of what is fair inside of our bones and flesh, such that the first come, first served, and often as not, first come, best served. And bring this back closer to home. Arguably, the most hazardous part of my job down at the Hands of Hope kitchen on Wednesdays is not mopping the floor with caustic cleansers. nor is it lighting the big 10-burner stove, gas stove, in a fire hall. Where I really put my life on the line is in calling the tables to come up to be served. With 10 tables and usually somewhere around 60 people eating, we've needed to adopt the practice of just calling individual tables up one at a time. It's less congested and it's easier for people that have a hard time standing for very long. But of course, once it became no longer a free-for-all, and some get called before others, then you stumble on the issue of fairness. And even if it is a totally random process of pulling a number out of a plastic container, which it is, all the trouble I can get into. One of the tables at the Hands of Hope Kitchen has a fairly high concentration of United Church of Bristol people. All right, maybe 2 or 3. But they're very vocal. And a couple of Wednesdays ago, I just happened to call their table last, 10th. And didn't I hear about it? They were lobbying, if you can believe this, they were lobbying to have me relieved of my duties and let Rich Kropp call the numbers. Dumping their own pastor for the sake of an Episcopalian. I was crushed. Well, I didn't help my case too much this past Wednesday when I failed to call their table at all. Or for a moment, jump into a somewhat more serious setting. When a day's wages are on the line, probably wages to support a family, most likely. 12 hours of work in the blazing Middle Eastern sun is no picnic. But what if you put your time in, only to find out that that lazy shiftless worker that came in at 5 p.m. is going to receive the same pay? Well, inside each of us, not just men, is a savvy mathematician who can calculate in a flash what our comparative wage just shrank to, with this latecomer getting the same payment. And it doesn't go over well. We broke our back all day. They come in after a round of golf, or maybe. So it's no surprise that these angry words echo through the Palestinian evening. You have made them equal to us. It's just not fair. What's the best way to start a fight with kids at snack time? Give one kid a bigger brownie. And there's good reason for that. It's called a sense of scarcity. Because most brownie batches that I've ever seen are finite. I've seen some really big brownie batches, but I've never seen an infinite brownie batch. Nor have I ever encountered a parent willing to feed an infinite amount of brownies to a child. I can only imagine what bedtime would be like. It's scarcity that causes the problem. It's funny though, because kids are not nearly so concerned about fairness when it comes to, say, how much water they get out of the tap. I mean, when was the last time you heard a child object because their sister got more water from the tap than they did? It might happen, but it's pretty rare compared to the brownies. Water, most years, is virtually limitless around these parts. Maybe not in Kenya, but around here. No one usually worries too much about getting enough water. But with so many other things, we operate with an attitude of scarcity and a zero-sum mindset. In other words, your gain is my loss, and vice versa. But God evidently doesn't operate that way, and that's the rub in these scriptures. God's nature is one of utter abundance, utter infinity. And even those who have excelled in math may have a rough time with the concept of infinity. It's way more than 100. What I want to share with you a story of abundance that I think you've heard before, but it's worth repeating in brief here. Several years ago at the Special Olympics event in Spokane, Washington, the contestants, all physically or mentally disabled, assembled at the starting line of the 100-yard dash. The sound of the gun, all took off, except for one boy, who stumbled on the asphalt and tumbled over and began to cry. Hearing the cry, two other runners slowed down, they looked back, and they returned to his side. One of them, a girl with Down syndrome, bent down, kissed him and said, "This will make it better." Then the contestants, these three, linked arms and walked together over the finish line. You may recall from that story that the crowd stood and cheered for minutes. Well, Special Olympians want to win as much as anyone else. And it would be unfair to assume otherwise. But there is, within this particular story, a sense that something greater than the desire to win overtook these runners. Just as that same something can overtake us, if we allow it to. That largeness of spirit and that sense of God's infinite love, the kind of thing that I think can help heal the world that's so caught up with striving, competition, and envy. It's a curious coincidence that this race occurred in Spokane, Washington, a place of such tragedy, just a few weeks ago, when a desperate boy opened fire in a school. At least to my mind, the exact nature of his desperation may not be known, but it seems certain that within the tormented soul of this high school sophomore, things like envy, competition, low self-esteem, even bullying, swirled together to help create this tragedy. So I guess it's safe to say that Spokane, just like every other place on earth, is home to both the darkest sorts of envy, desperation, and violence, as well as the brightest sorts of compassion and empathy and love. Oh, we're just about to enter into the thick of the sports seasons, fall season for athletics, when our fields are dotted with athletes of all sorts trying to run faster, score higher, and play better than the other team. The team identity can be fierce. Rivalries can be intense. Now, admittedly, I haven't seen a homecoming float in quite a while. But I remember when the slogans plastered across those floats were not especially genteel. For example, I never once read these words on a homecoming float. "Let us give this game our best and hopefully emerge victorious, but always with the utmost sportsmanship and respect for our worthy adversary." First of all, I wouldn't want to take the time to spell all that out in those paper flowers. It's a homecoming game, not an English class. And secondly, sentiments on homecoming floats, at least in my experience, are notably more crude. At least in my day, it was things like "Crush Clyde," "Beat the Panthers," "Smash the Mustangs." And it's not just schools either. Churches, even churches, can get up and get sort of caught up in this competitive frenzy. One church bulletin, true story, presumably from a Roman Catholic church, had this announcement: "Our youth basketball team is back in action Wednesday at 8 p.m. in the recreation hall. Come out and watch us kill Christ the King." I don't think there's a danger of killing Christ the King. Not with one basketball game. And I don't even think a few homecoming slogans jeopardize Jesus a whole lot. God's pretty resilient. But in the course of all the contests that we watch and the contests that we wage, even the silent ones within our soul, God just may be challenging us to release some of these fiercest loyalties, and maybe even our deepest sense of what's fair, as we live into a larger and more infinite love. So I say cheer for the home team, for sure. But remember, everybody's a home team. And they all need cheering, and they all need prayer.